At 6, the Conservatives launched their election manifesto, a raft of promises and pledges if they win the election. Rishi Sunak's hoping another cut in national insurance and the eventual abolition of the tax for the self-employed will change Tory fortunes.
We will enable working people to keep more of the money that you earn because you have earned it and have the right to choose what you spend it on.
We'll be reporting from the Tory seat of Aldershot on how the manifesto's gone down.
I have to hear what others offer and mull over the real meaning of what Rishi Sunak is saying before deciding.
Also on the programme, President Biden's son Hunter could face jail, found guilty on weapons charges.
The jury decided that Hunter Biden, who was a crack cocaine addict, had lied about his drug use when he bought a gun in 2018.
And England begin training in Germany ahead of the start of their Euros campaign.
On BBC London, Mind the Gap, another Elizabeth Line passenger tells us how he was seriously injured trying to board a train in West London.
Hello there. Rishi Sunak has launched the Conservative Party's election manifesto, promising a raft of new measures that he says will enable working people to keep more of the money they earn. He was speaking at the Silverstone racetrack and made pledges on tax, housing and immigration, including another 2p cut in the pound in national insurance, plus the abolition of the main self-employed rate. There'll be help for first-time buyers with the scrapping of stamp duty on homes up to £425,000 and a new Help to Buy scheme. And there's also a commitment to halve migration and have regular flights to Rwanda for those entering the UK illegally. Well, Chris was at the launch at Silverstone today. So, Chris, the Conservative Manifesto launch getting into gear where you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Evening to you, Clive. Here it is, 76 pages of Conservative promises. We hear that word, don't we, manifesto, pretty much 1 week for every 5 years. Well, this is pretty much the week, this week and next week, when we get these promises from the various parties. And here's how we're going to do it on the programme. As opposed to hearing the other parties say a variation of each manifesto is rubbish, because that's kind of what they would say, we're going to give more space to each party each evening to set out their arguments and for us to scrutinise them. So yesterday it was the Liberal Democrats, tomorrow it'll be the Green Party of England and Wales, on Thursday it will be Labour, today it was the Conservatives. Halfway through this election race, it's the moment for the cardboard boxes. Within them, those bundles of promises, not always kept, that set out a party's blueprint for the next 5 years. So the manifesto is here, so is the cabinet, then the Prime Minister. Music, applause and ovation from party supporters, yes, but also this, a candid acknowledgement from Rishi Sunak about how you may feel about him and the Conservatives.
I'm not blind to the fact that people are frustrated with our party and frustrated with me. Things have not always been easy, and we have not got everything right. But we are the only party in this election with the big ideas to make our country a better place to live.
A central theme of this manifesto is tax cuts, including a promise of another 2p cut in employee national insurance.
By 2027, we will have halved national insurance to 6%. That is a tax cut, my friends, worth £1,300 to the average worker.
Rishi Sunak praised the enterprise and risk-taking of the self-employed and said this.
In the next Parliament, we will scrap entirely the main rate of self-employed national insurance.
And having acknowledged on BBC Panorama last night that it's become harder to buy a home in recent years, the Prime Minister said he wanted to make it easier.
For the first-time buyers purchasing a home up to £425,000, we will abolish stamp duty entirely.
Stamp duty is a tax on buying a home in England and Northern Ireland. Next, what about the plan to send some migrants to Rwanda? Some Conservatives say it's time the UK left the European Convention on Human Rights, or ECHR, to make this easier. But Mr Sunak stops short of saying that.
If we are forced to choose between our security and the jurisdiction of a foreign court, including the ECHR, we will always choose our nation's security.
For much of the last 18 months, you've tried everything to try and revive Conservative fortunes, and not much appears to have worked. Could we rename this document today your Last Chance Saloon?
Well, Chris, I've been very clear when I got this job. We'd been through a very difficult time as a country. If you want a secure future, if you want lower taxes, if you want your pensions protected, if you want a more sensible approach to net zero, and you want your border secure, vote Conservative at this election.
And there ended perhaps this man's last big set-piece moment to change his fortunes. Time then to scuttle through the crowds and talk to some cabinet ministers. What do you make of that?
I think this is a really exciting manifesto for the future, and what I love about it is that it addresses every stage of our lives.
Mr Gove, if this is the game changer, why are you standing down?
Me? Well, I'm an old warhorse who's being put out to grass because we need a new generation to support the Prime Minister in the future.
Home Secretary, quick word with the BBC. It's a fudgerama, isn't it, on the European Convention of Human Rights?
The Safety of Rwanda Act makes it clear that if there's a contradiction between an adjudication in a foreign court and our ability to protect our borders, we protect our borders.
You're going to win?
This is absolutely in our grasp. I know we're behind in the polls.
I notice you're not saying yes.
Well, look, it's an election, and there's, I can't predict the outcome of an election. That's not my job.
The outcome of the election is your job at home. The cases the different parties are making are becoming clearer. Chris Mason, BBC News at Silverstone.
Well, the Conservatives are adamant their sums add up, but after a significant tax-raising parliament, they're now trying to convince voters that things will change. However, with finances stretched, how will they pay for any tax cuts? Faisal's here to explain all. Faisal.
Thanks, Clive. The manifesto is a $20 billion a year change to tax and spending, designed to communicate really one thing. The Conservatives want voters to trust them that taxes can be lowered after an increase in tax and the size of government since the pandemic. Let's take a look at how they say it adds up. That further 2% cut to national insurance, essentially that's a tax on work, 1% next April, another 1% in 2027, adding up to a £10 billion giveaway. Then a smaller cut from the abolition of self-employed national insurance, and the same again for some state pensioners' tax bills, and there are more smaller cuts. Now, over here is the funding for those. 2 crackdowns, essentially, on tax avoidance and welfare, saving a total of £18 billion a year. Let's just take that £12 billion on welfare. The Conservatives describe an agenda for dealing with the challenge, not going ahead with a massive post-pandemic rise in benefits for working households. Could you raise that money? Yes, but it's not a detailed plan. We don't know the specific policies and so those affected, whereas we do know that over there for the tax cuts. So a total £17 billion tax cut, with the biggest element cuts to national insurance, the tax on workers, worth £450 a year by 2027, balanced by what the Conservatives assert they can raise from that £18 billion double crackdown. The other big change is a £6 billion a year increase in defence spending to get it up to a 2.5% target, funded by tens of thousands fewer civil servants and which would reverse the post-pandemic increases and the diversion of research and development spending into defence.
All of the money to pay from that comes from quite uncertain things: tax avoidance, cutting civil service jobs, efficiencies in quangos, cutting welfare spending without definite plans. So we've got definite promises of goodies, of giveaways, with very uncertain ways of actually funding those promises.
Now, all this doesn't include some already announced policies of similar size: a bumper income tax hike from frozen thresholds, implied real cuts to some government departments too. This manifesto is basically asking voters to trust that the Conservatives can, will and want to shrink the welfare bill and the size of government in order to afford specific tax cuts, or rather, to give back some of the recent tax rises. Clive.
OK, Faisal, thank you. Faisal Islam, our economics editor there. So, how's the Conservative manifesto going down in the Tory heartlands? At the last election, Aldershot was comfortably held by the Conservatives. But now Labour has high hopes of taking the seat after success in the May local elections. Dan Johnson has spent the day in the town.
This is a military town with a Conservative tradition, but all sorts of things in Aldershot are changing and political loyalties are shifting too. So much so that Labour could now have a chance here in a seat that's been Conservative for over 100 years. So will Tory election manifesto promises make much difference?
I am interested, definitely, yes. I've reached the age I am now, 63. I've always been a socialist. I've started warming towards the Tories.
I just know I'm not going to vote Conservatives.
Whatever they say in their manifesto?
Yeah.
You've already made your mind up?
Yeah.
Can I ask how and why?
I just don't really think that it's going very well at the moment, and I feel like we need a change.
I'd love to get on the property ladder. Renting's not great, so having my own place would be lovely. Yeah.
Would that sway your vote?
Probably, yeah, actually, because it's within my interests.
So who should serve? David's only ever voted for a Conservative government.
Now, security also means a security of knowing that you will have dignity in retirement.
So the promise of a tax cut for pensioners, do you like the sound of that, David?
I'm blessed with enough that I won't make significant difference to me, but for many it will be a great help, yes.
Do you think you're any more likely to vote for Rishi Sunak this time, having heard what he's had to say?
Not more likely at this stage. I have to hear what others offer and mull over the real meaning of what Rishi Sunak is saying before deciding.
A growing town means GPs under pressure, and this one's still uncertain.
I'm really pleased that he's still planning to put the vaping ban into place.
What do you need to hear?
I want to hear about investment in primary care. We're the gatekeepers for the NHS. We keep costs down, we make things effective, and we're right on their doorsteps for patients to reach us. And one more doctor per surgery would make such a difference.
Sharon's living with Parkinson's and wants to be heard.
Make our streets safe and make our roads safe and the potholes filled in and all the little things that are making our country look untidy. There's been nobody strong enough, in my opinion, in the Conservatives to govern our country.
So will you vote Labour this time?
Yes, or Reform, can't decide.
Decisions to make. Dan Johnson, BBC News, Aldershot.
Right, let's rejoin Chris at Silverstone. Chris, quite a lot of the contents of this manifesto has, frankly, been flagged up in the last few days and weeks. Perhaps what might be more of a surprise for some is what's been left out.
Yes, I mean, it's not atypical, Clive, for a party to try and flesh out some of its ideas in advance of the publication of a manifesto in the hope that each gets some attention in and of itself, as opposed to a deluge all coming at once. And yet it is always worth asking what is not there as well as what is there, because a manifesto offers a spine, if you like, of a party's outlook for the next 5 years. The promises in documents like this are meant to have a sanctity that other more disposable ideas from politicians perhaps do not. So yes, there are tax cuts, and the spine, the controlling thought of this manifesto is tax cuts, stamp duty and national insurance, but there's no mention on income tax or inheritance tax. There's the promise, for instance, for people who've arrived on small boats to be sent to Rwanda, but not the promise to withdraw from the European Convention on Human Rights. You know, reading this to me, this is very much Rishi Sunak's manifesto, a Sunakian conservatism. Now, his allies would say it's pragmatic, it's thought through, it's deliverable. His internal critics privately say it's not bold enough, it's not game-changing enough, when a game changer is just what they need, if that would be possible at this stage. One senior Tory texting me saying that they felt that this would make no difference, but perhaps little could make a difference. One final thought, Clive. Conservatives are now beginning to say in public what they've mused in private for a while, and that is the anticipation of possible defeat, that maximising the Conservative vote is about minimising Labour's victory rather than necessarily preventing it.
All right, Chris, thank you. Chris Mason there, our political editor at Silverstone. Now, a man has been arrested after objects were thrown at Nigel Farage in Barnsley. The leader of Reform UK was on top of a bus and has posted a video of the incident online. Police say a 28-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of a public order offence. Labour is promising to create 100,000 extra dental appointments for children in a bid to clear backlogs in England. The new appointments would be for urgent and emergency care and on evenings and at weekends. Access to an NHS dentist has become increasingly difficult in many areas, with tooth decay the most common reason children aged 5 to 9 are being admitted to hospital.
I'm not prepared to simply stand by and let that happen, which is why we've championed, supervised teeth cleaning. We've been watching that this morning. And I don't really care what people call it. If the price for a child of not taking action is losing your teeth between the ages of 6 to 10, that's a price that's too high, as far as I'm concerned.
Also on the campaign trail, the Liberal Democrats are calling for a new rural GP fund to support doctors' surgeries around the country. They say it forms part of a package of measures worth £1 billion aimed at improving medical services and giving patients a legal right to see a GP within a week. On to other news now. And in America, President Biden's son, Hunter, has been found guilty of lying about his drug use to illegally buy a gun. The jury in the trial in Wilmington in Delaware convicted him on all 3 counts, and he could face a maximum of 25 years in jail. Well, Sarah Smith is outside the federal courthouse in Delaware for us now. Sarah.
Yeah, Hunter Biden walked out of court after the verdict holding hands with his stepmother, Jill Biden, the First Lady. And it's obvious this trial has been a huge strain on the whole family, including the president. He says he loves his son and is proud of the man he is today, a clean, reformed addict. This trial was about a time when he was anything but. Drugs, guns, prostitutes. This trial was peppered with a multitude of lurid details about Hunter Biden's private life and the chaos that came from his self-acknowledged addiction to crack cocaine. Prosecutors argued that Hunter Biden had committed a crime by lying on a federal form about his drug use when buying a .38 caliber revolver in October 2018. That gun, along with the remnants of crack and drug paraphernalia, were discovered in his car by his then partner Hallie Biden, who was also his sister-in-law, the widow of his brother Beau, who died of cancer 3 years earlier. Prosecutors showed video of her trying to dispose of the weapon in a dumpster, and she told the court, "I realise it was a stupid idea now, but I was panicking." "Why did you panic?" asked the prosecutor. "Because I didn't want him to hurt himself, and I didn't want my kids to find it and hurt themselves." Hunter Biden has already chronicled much of his struggles with drug addiction in a book, excerpts of which were entered into evidence and read by the author himself in the audio version.
Smoking crack cocaine every 3 days soon became smoking every 2 days, then every other day, then every hour of every day.
But throughout the case, the defence argued that Hunter Biden believed himself clean in October 2018. His lawyer said that the president's son was not using drugs when he bought that gun, and that it was never loaded, never carried, never used during the 11 days he owned it. Hunter Biden's stepmother, the First Lady, Jill Biden, attended nearly every day of this trial, appearing emotional as some of the evidence was laid out. This case has clearly put the whole family under great stress. Just before leaving for D-Day commemorations in France, the president himself issued a statement saying he was proud of his son for beating his addiction.
Hunter Biden's willful refusal to comply with the...
Hunter Biden has also long been a target for Republicans in Congress, who've been investigating accusations he made money by peddling influence when his father was vice president. No charges have resulted from that, and attempts to impeach Joe Biden in connection with his son's business dealings have stalled. This is not the only criminal case against Hunter Biden. He's also due to go on trial in California in early September for allegedly failing to pay more than $1 million in taxes. Sentencing won't happen for months, possibly just before the presidential election in November. So will this verdict have any impact on that election? Well, voters already knew that Hunter Biden was previously a crack cocaine addict. But maybe Donald Trump's claims that the American justice system is rigged and that it's being used by Joe Biden to persecute his opponents, maybe those claims will be undermined now the president's own son has also been convicted.
All right, Sarah, thank you for that. Sarah Smith there, live in Delaware, our North America editor. It is just shy of 20 past 6. Our top story this evening. And the Prime Minister launches the Conservatives' election manifesto with a raft of pledges on tax, housing and immigration. And the England squad begin limbering up after arriving in Germany for the Euros.
And on BBC London, the capital's housing crisis, why boroughs are moving more people out of London, some hundreds of miles away. Plus, how London Zoo is helping boost the number of dormice in the wild.
In the run-up to polling day, we're getting the latest from our reporters right across the UK, finding out the key issues in their backyards. In a moment, we'll hear from Dan O'Brien in Swindon, but first to Lucinda Adam in Shoreham-by-Sea in West Sussex. Lucinda, over to you.
Good evening from Sussex, where apart from Brighton and Hove, the Conservatives currently control every seat across East and West Sussex. But this blue coastal wall is not seen as safe as it used to be. And that's why polling suggests that the Conservatives could lose more than half of the seats that they're defending here. And that's why this has been such a key battleground in this election so far, and why we've seen party leaders on the campaign trail here. We've seen Ed Davey having ice cream on the beach in Eastbourne, one of the Liberal Democrats' 4 target seats. Sir Keir Starmer came here to East Worthing and Shoreham to make Labour's first major campaign speech. And just yesterday, not far from here, Rishi Sunak was campaigning in a pub in Horsham. And it's surprising to see places like Shoreham and Horsham on the front line of this election because they've been safe Conservative seats for more than a century. I'm standing by the River Ada tonight, and last month in the local elections, Labour took control of Ada District Council. And that mattered because until recently the Conservatives controlled all of our borough and district councils. Now they don't control any. A sign perhaps that the tide is turning for the Conservatives here in Sussex.
All right, Lucinda, thank you for that. Now over to Dan in Swindon. Hi, Dan.
Good evening, Clive. Welcome to Wiltshire, a county which in recent elections has only returned Conservative MPs. Now, this time around, the Liberal Democrats are really hoping to make some inroads here, but here in Swindon is a key battleground between Labour and the Conservatives. This town, you see, has picked MPs of the party which has ended up in government in every general election dating back to 1983. Our closest run seat is this one, South Swindon, a place with an awful lot going for it, but you wouldn't necessarily get that impression if you visited our town centre. And we're not just talking about boarded up shops and businesses, we are talking about crime and safety, a changing face of a local economy and a sense of pride in where people live. And it's that issue, as well as the struggles of the local NHS, with which voters here and many of the candidates are really keen to talk about in this town which has such form for picking which side ends up in number 10.
All right, we'll see what happens. Dan O'Brien in Swindon, thank you. And Lucinda Adam there in Shoreham-by-Sea. And a full list of the candidates standing in the general election is available on the BBC News website. Now, a High Court judge has ordered the convicted sex offender and former pop singer Gary Glitter to pay more than £500,000 in compensation to a victim he abused when she was 12. The woman sued the disgraced pop star after he was jailed in 2015 for abusing her and 2 other young people in the 1970s. A jury has been sworn in the retrial of the former nurse Lucy Letby at Manchester Crown Court. She's charged with attempting to murder a baby in Chester in February in 2016. Judith Moritz is at the court for us now. Just take us through this, Judith.
Yeah, Clive, just after the jurors were sworn, the trial judge, Mr Justice Goss, addressed them with Lucy Letby watching on from behind the glass wall dock here of courtroom number 7, and he told them that almost a year ago she was convicted of murdering and attempting to murder a number of babies. The judge said to the jury, it's highly likely that you'll have known something about this case at the time last year when the verdicts were returned. He said, we accept that, but it's important that you try her in this case solely on the evidence that's presented to you in court and not anything that you may have read or heard about it. Well, in this case, Lucy Letby is charged with one count of attempted murder, the attempted murder of a baby girl in February 2016. And the judge told the jury that that is a count which the jury in the original trial could not decide upon. Now, Lucy Letby denies that charge, and we expect that the prosecution will open their case tomorrow.
OK, Judith Moritz reporting live there from Manchester Crown Court. Thanks, Judith. Now, England have been training for the first time since arriving in Germany ahead of the start of their Euros campaign this weekend. It's been almost 2 decades since the Germans hosted a major footballing tournament. So what's at stake for the hosts? Here's Dan Rowan.
England hope to make a big impression here in Germany, and they've made a promising start. The squad, the star attraction this afternoon as they held their first training session in front of hundreds of local school children near to their Erfurt base. The last major men's tournament hosted here, the World Cup in 2006, unleashed huge national pride, showcasing a modern and unified Germany. But 18 years on, this feels a less confident country, one facing mounting economic and political uncertainty.
We're working with fans.
The man who represents 70 football fan groups across Germany is hopeful the Euros could help.
2006, the general mood was much more friendly, more open to Europe as well, not as fractured as it is now, not so many conflicts.
Can this tournament be a unifying force then?
These 4 weeks, definitely they will open a window where things are better. Yeah, football can bring people together, and this will happen in Germany as well.
Well, England will enjoy plenty of support out here in Germany, with more than 250,000 of their supporters expected to travel here during the course of this tournament, and around 40,000 expected in Gelsenkirchen on Sunday for the opening match against Serbia. But that game also presents the organisers with a challenge. Serbian football has been sanctioned over the behaviour of its fans several times in recent years, with hooliganism linked to far-right pro-Russian groups, and the local police have said they believe there is a threat of violence.
They have shared that intelligence with us.
The man in charge of the tournament today told me security was a priority.
The authorities rated that match from the start as a high-risk match. Serbia has not been in the tournament for some time, so there was as well some unknown factors. Okay, how are the two fan groups going to react? Our records do not show a high risk of clashes, but of course the match has a bit of a potential, if we are not taken care of, that it could escalate.
Germany rules the world again. Germany remains synonymous with success in the sport. A 4th World Cup in 2014, cementing its status as a footballing heavyweight.
They've got in the first phase.
But there's been a steep decline since, with no knockout win at a major tournament for 8 years.
Especially after the last tournaments, we have to prove ourselves. But we are excited, the mood in the team is joyful. I hope we will be able to cope with this whole situation that will start on Friday.
Germany today continued preparations for their opening match against Scotland on Friday. For the hosts, plenty at stake, both on and off the pitch. Dan Rowan, BBC News, Jena.
Now, they may look a little bit like ancient footballs or some random rocks, but actually they're 8 perfectly preserved giant catapult missiles used to attack Kenilworth Castle in Warwickshire during a 13th century civil war. And they've been discovered by English Heritage. The historian Will Wyeth has been telling us about them.
The larger of these stones are enormous. They're over 100 kilos. And these would have been launched by war machines 200 or 300 metres at the castle. Those ones are probably designed to attack walls and doors and towers. The smaller ones, about the size of a grapefruit kind of upwards, were probably more to attack people, whether it's archers or people mounting to fences, etc. They would have been terrifying. Historic sources talk about how once the king, Henry III, had set up the siege at the castle, he told his 9 war machines to fire continuously for 172 days. So it would have been a kind of cinematic quality siege that these stones are part of, really.
Wow, there you go. Anyway, what about the weather? Stav's here. Hiya.
Hiya, Clive. Good evening to you. The weather looks similar to what it was yesterday for many of us today, and I think tomorrow is also looking pretty similar as well. A lot of dry weather around, a few showers, mainly towards eastern areas, but there'll be some good sunny spells, and the sun is strong. So when you're in that sun, out of the breeze, and the wind will be lighter tomorrow, it should feel quite pleasant. So as we head through this evening overnight, most of the showers across central eastern areas will tend to fade away, and like the last few nights, with clearing skies, light winds, it's going to turn pretty chilly. These are towns and city values. We could be down to 1 to 3 degrees in some rural spots and a chance of some mist and fog as well. So another chilly night to come. This ridge of high pressure will build in for Wednesday, though, so that will bring lighter winds, and we should start to see a bit more sunshine around, particularly towards western areas. But we've still got that chilly air, the Arctic air, just looming around our shores. So it will again be below average temperatures through the afternoon. Most places dry. It's a chilly start, lots of sunshine around, a bit of mist and fog. That will clear. Again, some showers developing eastern England, perhaps, maybe northern Scotland, but the further west that you are, close to that ridge of high pressure, it should be mostly dry. In the sunny spells, again, temperatures below par. Plymouth could probably be the warmest spot at 18 or 19 degrees. Some changes taking place on to Thursday. We've got a new area of low pressure and a frontal system working its way in to western areas as we go through the day. It's a chilly start again, central eastern areas with some early sunshine, then the clouds build in as the wind and the rain starts to push northwards and eastwards, probably not reaching as far as southeast England, East Anglia, eastern England until after dark. But we've changed the wind direction, so nights will start to become milder, and we should start to pick up some warmer air with this area of low pressure. But Friday and the weekend dominated by this area of low pressure. It's not going to be a washout by any means. There will be some spells of warm, strong June sunshine, but showers or longer spells of rain at times. Some of them will be heavy, and it will be feeling a little bit warmer. That's it from me, Clive.
All right, Stav, thank you. Stav Danaeus there. That's it. Now, let's join our colleagues for all the news where you are. Have a great evening.